The Bodhisattvas search Alara and Uddaka were renowned as teachers among the Brahmins, and there was no one in those days who surpassed them in learning and philosophical knowledge. The Bodhisattva went to them and sat at their feet. He listened to their doctrines of the Atman or self, which is the ego of the mind and the doer of all doings. He learned their views of the transmigration of souls and of the law of karma, how the souls of bad men had to suffer by being reborn in men of low caste, in animals, or in hell, while those who purified themselves by libation, by sacrifices, and by self-mortification would become kings, or Brahmins, or Devas, so as to rise higher and higher in the grades of existence. He studied their incantations and offerings and the methods by which they attained deliverance of the ego from material existence in states of ecstasy. Alara said, "What is that self which perceives the actions of the 5 roots of mind, touch, smell, taste, sight, and hearing? What is that which is active in the 2 ways of motion, in the hands and in the feet? The problem of the soul appears in the expressions, I say, I know and perceive, I come, and I go, or I will stay here. Thy soul is not thy body. It is not thy eye, not thy ear, not thy nose, not thy tongue, nor is it thy mind. The eye is the one who feels the touch in thy body. The eye is the smeller in the nose, the taster in the tongue, the seer in the eye, the hearer in the ear, and the thinker in the mind. The eye moves thy hands and thy feet. The eye is thy soul. Doubt in the existence of the soul is irreligious, and without discerning this truth, there is no way of salvation. Deep speculation will easily involve the mind. It leads to confusion and unbelief. But a purification of the soul leads to the way of escape. True deliverance is reached by removing from the crowd and leading a hermit's life, depending entirely on alms for food. Putting away all desire and clearly recognizing the non-existence of matter, we reach a state of perfect emptiness. Here we find the condition of immaterial life. As the munja grass when freed from its horny case, as a sword when drawn from its scabbard, or as the wild bird escaped from its prison, so the ego liberating itself from all limitations finds perfect release. This is true deliverance, but those only who will have deep faith will learn. The Bodhisattva found no satisfaction in these teachings. He replied, "People are in bondage because they have not yet removed the idea of the ego. The thing and its quality are different in our thought, but not in reality. Heat is different from fire in our thought, but you cannot remove heat from fire in reality. You say that you can remove the qualities and leave the thing, but if you think your theory to the end, you will find that this is not so. Is not man an organism of many aggregates? Are we not composed of various attributes? Man consists of the material form, of sensation, of thought, of dispositions, and lastly, of understanding. That which men call the ego when they say I am, is not an entity behind the attributes. It originates by their cooperation. There is mind, there is sensation and thought, and there is truth. And truth is mind when it walks in the path of righteousness. But there is no separate ego soul outside or behind the thought of man. He who believes the ego is a distinct being has no correct conception. The very search for the Atman is wrong. It is a wrong start, and it will lead you in a false direction. How much confusion of thought comes from our interest in self and from our vanity when thinking, I am so great, or I have done this wonderful deed. The thought of thine ego stands between thy rational nature and truth. Banish it, and then wilt thou see things as they are. He who thinks correctly will rid himself of ignorance and acquire wisdom. The ideas I am, and I shall be, or I shall not be, do not occur to a clear thinker. Moreover, if our ego remains, how can we attain true deliverance? If the ego is to be reborn in any of the 3 worlds, be it in hell, upon earth, or be it even in heaven, We shall meet again and again the same inevitable doom of sorrow. We shall remain chained to the wheel of individuality and shall be implicated in egotism and wrong. All combination is subject to separation, and we cannot escape birth, disease, old age, and death. Is this a final escape? Said Uddaka. Consider the unity of things. Things are not their parts, yet they exist. The members and organs of thy body are not thine ego, but thine ego possesses all these parts. What, for instance, is the Ganges? Is the sand the Ganges? Is the water the Ganges? Is the hither bank the Ganges? Is the hither bank the Ganges? Is the farther bank the Ganges? The Ganges is a mighty river, and it possesses all these several qualities. Exactly so is our ego. But the Bodhisattva replied, Not so, sir. If we remove the water, the sand, the hither bank, and the farther bank, where can we find any Ganges? In the same way, I observe the activities of man in their harmonious union, but there is no ground for an ego outside its parts. The Brahmin sage, however, insisted on the existence of the ego, saying, The ego is the doer of our deeds. How can there be karma without a self as its performer? Do we not see around us the effects of karma? What makes men different in character, station, possessions, and fate? It is their karma, and karma includes merit and demerit. The transmigration of the soul is subject to its karma. We inherit from former existences the evil effects of our evil deeds and the good effects of our good deeds. If that were not so, how could we be different? The Tathagata meditated deeply on the problems of transmigration and karma and found the truth that lies in them. The doctrine of karma, he said, is undeniable, but the theory of the ego has no foundation. Like everything else in nature, the life of man is subject to the law of cause and effect. The present reaps what the past has sown, and the future is the product of the present. But there is no evidence of the existence of an immutable ego being, of a self which remains the same and migrates from body to body. There is rebirth, but no transmigration. Is not this individuality of mine a combination, material as well as mental? Is it not made up of qualities that sprang into being by a gradual evolution? The 5 roots of sense perception in this organism have come from ancestors who performed these functions. The ideas which, I think, came to me partly from others who thought them, and partly they rise from combinations of the ideas in my own mind. Those who have used the same sense organs and have thought the same ideas before I was composed into this individuality of mine are my previous existences. They are my ancestors, as much as the I of yesterday is the father of the I of today, and the karma of my past deeds affects the fate of my present existence. Supposing there were an Atman that performs the actions of the senses, then if the door of sight were torn down and the eye plucked out, that Atman would be able to peep through the larger aperture and see the forms of its surroundings better and more clearly than before. It would be able to hear sounds better if the ears were torn away, smell better if the nose were cut off, taste better if the tongue were pulled out, and feel better if the body were destroyed. I observe the preservation and transmission of character. I perceive the truth of karma, but see no Atman, whom your doctrine makes the doer of your deeds. There is rebirth without the transmigration of a self. For this Atman, this self, this ego in the I say, and in the I will, is an illusion. If this self were a reality, how could there be an escape from selfhood? The terror of hell would be infinite, and no release could be granted. The evils of existence would not be due to our ignorance and wrongdoing, but would constitute the very nature of our being. Then the Bodhisattva went to the priests officiating in the temples. But the gentle mind of the Sakyamuni was offended at the unnecessary cruelty performed on the altars of the gods. He said, "Ignorance only can make these men prepare festivals and hold vast meetings for sacrifices. Far better to revere the truth than try to appease the gods by shedding blood." What love can a man possess who believes that the destruction of life will atone for evil deeds? Can a new wrong expiate old wrongs? And can the slaughter of an innocent victim blot out the evil deeds of mankind? This is practicing religion by the neglect of moral conduct. Purify your hearts and cease to kill. That is true religion. Rituals have no efficacy. Prayers are vain repetitions, and incantations have no saving power. But to abandon covetousness and lust, to become free from evil passions, and to give up all hatred and ill will, that is the right sacrifice and the true worship. Uruvela.